What's up, everyone? It's Nick from Team Nitro YGO here, and today I am bringing you a yummy Fiendsmith deck profile for the current format. I've been enjoying this deck a lot. It has been the type of Yu-Gi-Oh! That I enjoy playing, which is a very low-to-the-ground, very interactive combo deck that gets to play a lot of non-engine, can bridge between its two engines, and it doesn't require that many bricks. So I recently took down a winner box for this event, as well as topping some other small locals. So I've been very, very happy with the list. If you just want the list, it will be in the description as the first dueling book link. Otherwise, let's just get right into it. Let's talk about the deck. So for the yummy cards, which are the primary cards of the deck, we got 3 Cupsy because Cupsy is the GOAT. We got 3 Piri Raymap because it's more Cupsies. This card does make you susceptible to draw, but just having more consistency is super important. When you get to draw names in this deck, it's broken. 3 Marshmallow because it's the best name to draw. It can be an extender, it can be a starter, it can be a little bit of everything. And it's actually fine with Fiendsmith cards because it just like baits Fua and Perulia really easily. It's so good. And then the 1 Cookie and the 1 Lollipo. These are kind of like the weakest ones. Lollipo's the best one to interact on the opponent's turn. The graveyard just matters so much more. But Cookie comes up against like random things that you need to out. And then for the spells, we have a Croaky, Minion, Surprise, and Assist. So the 2 field spells are pretty obvious. You kind of need to bridge in between them on the first couple turns of the game to maximize your options. Apologies. And this helps you kill your opponent. This is just the best reborn in the game while being a disruption. I'm going to talk about Assist real quick. This card's broken. This card's insane. So for those of you who don't know what this card does, it's got a bunch of effects. The main one is it can send 2 yummy cards, including itself, to the graveyard to non-targeting bounce a card on the field or graveyard, either player's field or graveyard, back to the hand. And then it has an effect in the graveyard where as long as you can banish it, except the turn it was sent there, and then you get to Foolish Burial, a yummy card. So this card gives you a layered. This card makes your end board like super layered because now when you tag out your Synchro into Snatchy plus Marshmallow, Snatchy gets a Croaky, Marshmallow gets this. You get 2 pieces of disruption off your 1 tag out, and this helps your Snatchy beat things like Imperm, Droplet, Crown. Pretty much anything but Super Poly this card beats. And it gives you follow-up as well because you can send it to, or you banish it, or like you banish it, Foolish a name, and then when you bring back the Marshmallow can place this from the banish zone, giving you another disruption. So this card is actually super important. It's one of the best cards in the deck. Now for the Fiendsmith engine. This is kind of like the contentious part of the deck a little bit because people just don't know how many of the Fiendsmith cards they want. I went with a smaller engine. So I played, 2 Engraver, 1 Lacrima, 1 Lurie, and 1 Track. So shout out to my boy Jesse for letting me borrow these. I simply cannot afford these cards right now, so that's where we are. So the reason that I chose to play the smaller Fiendsmith engine, some people play 3 Engraver, 2 Track, some play 2 and 2. I saw a wild list that was playing 3 Track, 1 Engraver. It was crazy. But basically the theory behind these cards is they increase your ceiling by letting you end on things like Caesar or IP pretty easily. And they don't come at really any opportunity cost to the deck. Everything's light, so you still can play Purge. But you don't want to draw too many of these cards because by themselves they don't do that much. And they're pretty weak going second. Like, you don't really get to trade effectively with your opponent's resources as opposed to with other engines in this deck. So that's why I wanted to play the smaller bridge, because once you get them in rotation, you always have them in rotation. You don't have to fight hard to keep them in rotation. And they all are relatively replaceable. And you can do some really cute things with Lurie being a level 1 monster. It comes up in a lot of combos. So I'm also not playing the Trap. The Trap's super win more. The nice thing about the smaller Fiendsmith engine is that you're not forced to play any of the stupid Azamina bricks. You don't have to figure out how much of your extract you want to dedicate. And yeah, these cards are just great. They help you bait out interaction, very similar to your yummy names, and they just help provide extra bodies. They can bridge between the 2 engines. They just supplement each other so well. But the main reason I wanted to play a smaller Fiendsmith engine was to play more non-engine. As you can see, I've talked about 20 engine cards. The other 20 cards I'm holding is non-engine. Like, this deck is the pure definition of a 1-card combo deck. There are so many ways that you can play with 1 card that you don't have to worry about filling your deck with random air. Cards that just don't do anything unless you're already playing the game. So that's it for the engines. 20 engine cards, 20 non-engine cards now. 3 Ash. This is really important. You have to be able to negate Fua. You have to be able to negate Perulia. This can also negate fusion spells, and it can help you in grind games. Just cut your opponent off a specific resource loop. Super flexible card. Just best hand trap in the game. 3 Imperm, so it's a trap, doesn't trigger Azuna. Pretty standard. I decided to main deck Perulia. This was something I saw a lot of people from YCSs do recently, is main Perulia over Fua. At first, I wasn't a big fan, but the more matches I played, the more I really liked this card. Yummy Fiendsmith, Yummy in general, is a deck that has a lot of problems going second, and the Charmies are really weird in that they kind of want your opponent to keep playing and establish an engine, which Yummy has a hard time dealing with on its own. So playing non-engine like Perulia allows you to dig deeper in your deck for the cards that actually matter, while also kind of forcing your opponent to play incredibly suboptimally. And in every single matchup, outside of like exactly Odeon, you're going to get a card off this. And even Odeon might give you a card. I can't think of a single deck in the game right now that won't at least give you a card off this. And while that's not great, I don't love my card being Upstart Goblin. There's just so many more matchups where Perulia is way higher impact than Fua. Like, people are developing whole lines and reintegrating or reevaluating their end boards and combo lines to not give any draws off of Fua, or give one draw and make all the disruption. That is not exactly where I want my hand trap to be. I want my hand trap to be impactful, and I want it to be relevant. I want it to have text that my opponent has to care about. And right now, Perulia just has way more text than Fua. And then for the effect negation, 3 Valor, 3 Mourner. Even though Valor can't hit Crocea in the draw phase, just more ways to mitigate the board, because again, this deck has a really hard time going second. The engines itself have such a hard time playing into boards. Your opponent can't even have a half board. They need to have like an eighth of a board if you want to play going second. So these cards help with that. 2 Bell. This card's really weird because I like this card as a hand trap, but it's more of a breaker. Mostly, again, the only time this card's like an actual hand trap in the middle of your opponent's turn is exactly like Mitsurugi lines. But like the 60 card slop decks have so many ways of beating this card. The mirror can play around, not necessarily play around it, but they can play through it pretty easily, unless their hand is like very mediocre. Draco Tail, this card's crazy, but like the whole deck is cards that are good against Draco Tail. It was really hard to figure out like how many bells I wanted. But I decided just to play 2, because as a hand trap, it's probably the weakest one in my deck. So, and then the last hand trap is 3 Purge. This is kind of the reason to play the Fiendsmith engine as opposed to other engines, is you still get to play Purge. And this is just one of the most important cards in the format. If Ash is really good, Boneless Ash, still powerful. Still an incredibly playable card. So that does it for the main deck. It's 40 cards. The other thing I like about playing smaller bridge engines like this is that you're not forced to increase the deck count. I like the Azamina cards, and don't get me wrong, I'm still experimenting with them. I'm trying to figure out a list that I like for that. But being able to play 40 and maximize your chance of drawing Yummy, it's just so powerful. Like, the Yummy cards are broken. Why are we not deck building to maximize that? I'll never understand that. But so 40 cards in the main deck. Let's talk about the extra deck real quick. For the Yummy part of the extra deck, 1 Snatchy, 1 Cupsy Way, 1 Lollipop Way, and 1 Cookie Way. I feel like this is pretty standard. You're never going to play more than one each of these. They're all recyclable. I'd play more Snatchy if I was allowed to. RIP the GOAT. And then for the Fiendsmith part, we have 1 Requiem, 1 Sequence, 1 Necroquip, 1 Lacrima, 1 Caesar. I want to talk about No Desiree really quick, because I know a lot of people like that card to be on their endboard piece. I'm going to be honest, I think Desiree fucking sucks. I think that card is incredibly win more, in the sense that if you were already playing the game and you got to establish a board, the extra things on it don't matter. The Caesar, Lollipop, Surprise, SP, IP, whatever, is more than enough to deal with what your opponent has. You don't need a Desiree on top of that. Even though I will admit it can be helpful sometimes to like clear over big things, that's another reason Assist shines. Assist doesn't target to bounce. This can out pretty much every single thing in the fucking game. So you don't have to play a bunch of dog water extra deck cards to out things. Like, you can do it in engine, which is super important. Again, trying to limit the amount of unnecessary extra deck space. So now for the extra link ones, we have Almirage. This is kind of the 15th extra deck card. I was playing Link Spider for the longest time, but it just never came up. If you like, people are going to nib you at like the most irrelevant opportunity most of the time. And even through nib, you can make like pretty decent boards. So having the Almirage that lets you push when you draw too many hand traps, really, really important. Link Karibo, because it's 2 Link ones at the same time. This card is ridiculous. Gravity Controller as part of the bridge, and Reproducus as part of the bridge. So when you put Necroquip in the EMZ, you're going to put Gravity Controller in it after you Necroquip draw, so that you can then use the Lurie that's left over to make Cupsy Way, and then you're off to the races. And then Reaper can turn your things into light fiends or light beasts. So you're able to convert Fiendsmith into Yummy and Yummy into Fiendsmith. The two engines completely bridge together at just the cost of this card, which is super important. And it's an Earth, so it means going second, your Purge is still alive. And that's really important because this card's a really powerful hand trap. And then the last two extra deck cards, Muckracker. I'm going to be honest, I think this card is a steaming pile of shit. I just played it at the behest of my teammate because he felt that like the only part of the end board that was super vulnerable to removal was Caesar. So being able to protect Caesar is pretty nice. I'm going to cut this card for IP, I think. This card it's come up for me one game in maybe like 40 or 50 matches. As an end board piece, it's just irrelevant. I would just rather have IP in like every scenario. Because if they go to Fallen the Virtuous or Caesar, you can just go chain IP and turn it into SP and you still have 2 disruptions. Like I don't think it's worth playing this card. It should just be IP. And then SP. This card's broke. Card's really broken. So that's it for the extra deck. Nothing crazy. There's no really flex slots, unfortunately, outside of the Almirage. So I guess like Almirage and Muckracker are like your 2 quote-unquote flex slots. You can do with those whatever you want. Like I said, I think I'm just going to cut the Muckracker for IP. I just don't think it's as relevant. Onto the side deck. Side decking 3 Fua. There are just a bunch of decks right now that if you Fua them, their end board's going to be way weaker than what it's going to be. And when you go second, that's all you can pretty much do. We're siding a bunch of more hand traps, so we can side deck upwards of like 28 hand traps when we go second, so you're always going to be able to draw into high impact cards off Fua if they decide to play into it. Else is just broken. Some decks just can't beat this card, which is like super cool. And then I did decide to side the Cyframe package. Just again, one of the more powerful cards in the format. Nothing really to say about that. I wish I would have played a third Delta. That's like kind of my only regret. I was just worried about like drawing too many of the same hand trap, so I tried to limit that as much as I could. Because you really want to draw a variety of hand traps. You don't want to draw the same one, but you also need a quantity of them. So it's kind of like a give and take sort of thing with those. Yeah, I'd play third Delta going forward, I think, though. 3 Rock, this card was awful, but it's another card that you can just draw into when you have 6 Charmers in your deck post side. You need something to punish your opponent for being ignorant, and this punishes your opponent for being ignorant, so no complaints there. Now onto the weird part of my side deck. There's this Obedient School. So I'm going to be honest, this is not my input to this deck. This is all the UK and European players, so shout out to them for being the fucking kings. The theory behind this card is that because the Fiendsmith cards are so weak going second, what you do is you just side out all your Fiendsmith cards going second, you just board into more hand traps and Schooled, and you basically just play Yummy Turbo. Like, you're basically just playing pure Yummy going second. You have 30 hand traps, so your opponent is just not going to be able to play. And then on your turn, any Yummy name wins you the game. Like, you just kill them. And this is another push for that, so. And then for going first, Call by the Grave, because it's broken, and then 3 Droplet. I was playing Solemns for a while, but the problem with Solemns is that if your opponent double hand traps you and it ends your turn, setting a Solemn is often not enough because the rest of their hand can just push through everything. So I wanted a card that was flexible on the play and on the draw. Like, you can still board it and Droplet when you go second, although its effectiveness is a little bit worse because the deck's not as good going second. And this card lets you interact with the turn 0 plays in the format, stuff like Arthalion, or 5 mana into Arthalion to bounce your monsters, Azuna or Holy Sue, random rogue decks like turn 0ing you with like the Fire King stuff. Droplet has actually been insanely good for me in testing. This is one of the cards that I consider main decking, just because it is so powerful. I just felt like the hand trap approach was a little bit better for what the deck is inherently trying to do, but I would not blame anybody for main decking this card. It is insanely powerful, and I am so happy I played this card over Solemns. I'm going to be honest. It did so much more work. And that's going to do it for the deck profile. There's not really too much to say. I feel like for the most part, I don't want to say this deck is solved, because I don't think that's necessarily true. But I think that this is about as innovative as I'm going to get with the deck for the time being, simply because I want to deck build for the strengths of me as a player and the format, and that's what I've been trying to do with this list. Just a bunch of hand traps, 1-card combos, and being able to play super low to the ground. If people go for the more board breaker approach, I would much rather be playing a deck like this. If they go back to playing a bunch of hand traps, the Azamina deck gets a little bit better. The other downside with this deck is that you are a little worse into Draco Tail. The Fiendsmith cards just don't trade as profitably into them as the Yummy cards do. So you're kind of at a disadvantage there. But Caesar's still great against them, so it's tough to say. But anyway, that is going to do it. Thank you guys so much for watching the deck profile. As always, if you just want a visual of the list or a download link, it will be in the description of this video. along with my Facebook profile and my Twitter profile. Go follow me, go friend me. I'm going to post some stuff over there. And yeah, that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much again for watching. My name is Nick from Team Nitro YGO, and I'll see you all in the next one.